Please join me for Ask the Good Doctor, live today and every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central Standard Time, and 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Bring your questions.
Last week was so good, we had to have Dr. Kathie Mathis back. She is an expert in sexual human trafficking. Welcome back, Dr. Kathie. We
Thank
want
you.
to we want to pick right up where we left off last week, and you said that, and if you missed last week, go back to part one. Relationship terrorism is akin to domestic violence because in a relationship, your mate is terrorizing you domestically. And I know this has a lot to do with your personal story. Would you mind sharing it briefly?
Not at
You
all.
got into this work.
Yeah. Yeah. I got into this work not knowing I was going to get into this work many years ago. I was married to an alcoholic abuser who tried to murder me 3 times while I was married to him. And I stayed. And so having been there, done it, I understand the grooming steps. I understand how the brain creates trauma bonding, which keeps a victim in the relationship. And that again is another correlation with victims of human trafficking and domestic violence. I don't like the word domestic violence or intimate partner violence. That minimizes what really, it's terrorism. It is a relationship terrorist who is treating you, research shows this, no different than prisoners in a prisoner of war camp. They use the same tactics. We come out with the same PTSD things that prisoners of wars come out with from a war, because our homes are our prison camps. Our
Yes.
relationship is our war. So that's how I got into this. I was a respiratory therapist when I went to college the first time. But when I got into my relationship, there was nobody to help me because domestic violence was just beginning. And I had never heard of shelters. There was no advocates to help me through. In fact, how I got my recovery was through this wonderful and amazing psychologist named Dr. Matheson. And she goes, and she was right up front. She says, honey, I don't know anything about domestic violence, but I do know about drug and alcohol. That was her specialty and her expertise. Well, I was married to an alcoholic, but she says, I will guarantee you this. We'll learn about this together so that we can help everybody. And she says, your job when you are through your recovery is to get out there and educate everybody and help every victim out there. So that became my purpose and my passion as I went through my own recovery. And I had a daughter. I had a 6-year-old daughter who also needed recovery because domestic violence also affects children, even though adults don't think it does. It does. The children are affected just like adults are.
Sure.
So my daughter got her recovery. I got mine. And she and I were the only mother-daughter team anybody had ever heard of at the time, telling our stories to anybody and everybody.
Wow.
And then one day, a friend of mine who worked for the Department of Corrections asked me to speak in front of a bunch of parolees about my experience of being a victim, and asked if my daughter would come as well. And so we both said, yes, we would. And we started speaking, and we were only supposed to speak for 30 minutes. And we ended up being there 2.5 hours because the guys wanted to know more and more and more. So long story short, he turned to me and he said, you should be working with the predators. He said, they're responding to you. And I said, never. I will never work with a predator. I'm only working for victims. He says, you're not helping a victim if you're not helping the predator.
Oh.
Powerful. I mean, it changed my life. And I
Yes.
looked at him and I said, I don't like you very well, because now he was putting another charge on me to make, and that's how I got started in working with predators and became an expert in the predator out there, as well as the victimology of what's going on. And I went to school and got my degree as a clinical psychologist and, in clinical psychology. Yeah.
And I love it. What say you about the reformed predators and what it is that led them to that predilection?
Such a good question. And thank you for asking it, because people will be shocked to know that in a domestic violence, and this is domestic violence,
Okay.
3 to 11% of the abusers change, the rest do not. And the only way that you get change in any predator is because they want to change.
Yeah.
That's it. But it's simple. Our programs that we have out there for the predators are fabulous, but you can't make somebody change. They
Yeah.
have to want to change. But the other thing that I think people need to understand is a lot of them will hide in the church. They'll go, oh, I found God. God
Yeah.
saved me. No, they did not. That's part of their manipulation
Or
and what
cover.
they Yes, exactly. And they know that's what people want to hear, and people instantly believe them rather than saying, really? So what
Mm.
did God do to help you change? And they know the lingo, okay? But they're hiding, and that's part of our problem. It's only
Mm.
after years of them getting, quote, recovery. And some of them, there is no recovery. You can never, ever recover a psychopath or a sociopath. There is no recovery for those.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
was married to one. Go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. So what I call typical predators, they're the ones that you can create a desire in them to change, work with them on getting them to want that desire, and you helping them to be motivated in that way to get that change. But the rest you can't, which is why the statistics are so low on recovery.
Now, have you found it to be really true, the adage that hurt people hurt people? And have you found that to be the case with especially those who engage with sex trafficking of younger people?
Yeah, most people who are involved in the predatorialness of the sextortion and all the other human trafficking forms, whether it's labor, all any of the other areas, they are hurt, they are damaged, they are part of a system of broken people, bringing in more people that if they weren't broken, they are by the time they're brought in, which I gave that example of Las Vegas, just one of the ways. I mean, there's so many, I'm going to do a disclaimer before I say this next statement. Some people may not want to hear what I have to say
Please
in
say
my
it.
next statement, but I have to say it. And that is the female genital mutilation that happens as part of breaking a young child, where they'll burn her vagina with a hot object to build up scar tissue so adult men can rape her over and over again. I mean, these are not normal, healthy people. These are broken people that do that and create other broken people. And because of it being so easily done, and there's very little consequences for these predators, it continues to grow. It's the second largest crime business, soon to be the first in the world, because people, you never run out of people. There's always somebody where you can run out of guns, you can run out of drugs, that kind of, but people, and even in the business of human trafficking, if somebody should die, they'll sell their body parts. So even after death, these people are making money off of their victims by selling their body parts. And, depending on what body part, each body part has a different price on it. So money is made from birth to after death. And so why wouldn't you, if you're a criminal, want to get into a business where, first of all, very little consequences. Most people are undereducated. Law enforcement is strapped. We don't have enough law enforcement focused on this. So even when we do report, the follow-up is difficult because the law enforcement are understaffed in handling all the cases that are being brought to them. I'm part of a group called Innocent Lives Foundation, which has their whole purpose and mission is to find these predators on the dark web that are going after children. Well, we report, we identify and report, but not all of the cases are able to be followed up on because of a shortage of our government funding law enforcement to be able to follow up on all of these. So predators know that. So if I can make billions of dollars, and they do make billions of
I
dollars.
believe it.
And there's very little consequences, and most people don't even know how bad this is going on. Why wouldn't I be drawn that direction? So my words of advice to all your viewers is, if you see something and it doesn't look right, then say something. Even if you're wrong, you can always say, oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. But if you're right, you're saving somebody's life, and that's so important.
You know, we're speaking of the predators who do the grooming and the luring and the transporting. But what about the man who walks in that room and full well knows that's a child, but does it anyway? What is his problem?
Broken. Very, very. I had one of the largest sex offender practices in California for 6 years, way back before anybody else wanted to work with sex offenders. And I would hear their stories talking about what you're talking about. And you had just mentioned where they would see children. And I'll never forget this story. I tell this story. I had a 65-year-old grandpa. And he was in front of me for being arrested for molesting a 6-year-old. And this is his story. He went over to his friend's house on a hot afternoon, was sitting there having beer with his friend. His friend's 6-year-old granddaughter comes into the house, and she's in her little tutu. She had just come from ballet class. And she says to her grandpa, "Grandpa, do you want to see what I learned in ballet class today?" And her grandpa said, "Yeah, show me what you did." So she begins to dance. And this sex offender sitting there going, "Oh, I knew it was for me." She was giving me a private dance. And she wasn't doing this for her grandpa. She was doing it for me. She was turning me on, and I knew it. So he said, I got so aroused that I asked her grandfather to go to the store to get us some more beer. And when he did, he took her into the bathroom and molested her. That's the thought process of a predator. It is not, this is a 6-year-old. She's not trying to turn anybody on.
Right.
Right? That's a broken, deviant brain and mentality and mindset from somebody who's so broken, they need to be taken off the streets forever. And I'm going to say this, and I know it's not politically correct, but there's no cure for sex offenders, and every one of them should be put on an island all by themselves, away from society, and let them go at each other, but leave the rest of humankind alone.
Okay. You know, but this is an issue that affects the human condition.
Yeah.
It's this brokenness. It's this silence. It's swallowing your truth and not being able to express your hurt, your pain, your fears, and how you have been mistreated, that is allowed to perpetuate, and it festers, and then it manifests itself in something like taking a 6-year-old girl to the bathroom. What is the percentage of girls who are able to escape, or guys who are or women even, who are able to escape once they've been trafficked?
That's a really good question. I have never seen any statistics on how many have been able to escape. I have not even seen statistics on how many of the predators have actually been healed and have overcome that. That kind of research is not out there at this point in time. All I can tell you is that the survivors that I work with, that I continue to work with, this is another similarity with domestic violence victims, and that is trauma is encoded in the brain forever.
Yeah.
You don't get over it. It is a lifetime struggle of staying focused on your healing, taking good care of yourself, learning from those trauma experiences, etc. And when people do a huge injustice to a family member or a friend that's a survivor of either one of those, and they say, you should be over it by now.
Oh,
that's the biggest ignorance and
victim
blaming ever.
It's ignorant. It's ignorant.
Because trauma is encoded in the brain. In fact, research shows it affects the very cells of your body and your genetics.
Absolutely.
So This is not something that you just get over. And a lot of them don't even talk about it. So we don't know how many people are out there that are survivors that have never ever told, because it's not safe to, for the reason I just said. Well,
Yeah.
what? You should have known better. Really? Well, you should know better not to say you should have known better.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
You know,
you.
it's like when you are up against, and I've been working in this field for over 37 years. When I get up against a master manipulator, and they are good,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes me, and I'm considered an expert in this, a minute to figure out what is presenting itself here. Is this guy really as good as he's appearing to be in manipulation, or am I misunderstanding? So again, if I do that as an expert, what is somebody going to do who's not, when they're listening to somebody and going, oh, we always doubt ourselves. Make sure you're right. You don't want to make any mistake. The messages we get of being perfect. Well,
Yes.
I've learned I'd rather make a mistake and be wrong and apologize for it
Agreed.
than to not say anything and not to follow up with what my intuition and my experience says. No, this guy's just really good. When I'm up in court against these guys, the court system is set up to be against a victim. They make a victim prove that she's a victim or he's a victim. They never make a predator prove they're not a predator. So our whole legal system is set up, yes, to protect the predator. Absolutely, it's broken. Absolutely.
Well, this has been some incredible education.
Thank you.
So much so that I'm going to count you a good doctor for this, as well as you are our good doctor on this topic. And we're going to have you back to bring up what's new, what else we can look for, other signs. This conversation needs to be ongoing, and we are committed to teaching about the things that affect the human condition. And certainly this is one of them. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. And we're just scratching the surface right now. But Dr. Kathie, you are a joy and a gift to this world. I appreciate you and thank you. Your information, your contact to your Innocent Lives Foundation will be below, and we will see you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. And you call me anytime and we'll work it out. I'd love to be on your show again. Thank you for all you do as well.
Thank you. And thank each and every one of you. That's all the time we have today. I want to thank my team, IW supervising producer, Chris Green, technical producer, and DJ Indy, our announcer. And remember to let your eyes shine, cut back on the wine, get good food fast, and go easy on the greasy. Until next time, I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire, here to help you attain and maintain your perfect health. Let's do it again next week, okay? God bless you.